Good morning, everyone. I'm Don Smith, President and CEO of Copper Point Mutual Insurance Company and Board Chair of the Arizona We Want Institute. My involvement with Arizona We Want, the movement, actually began almost 10 years ago, well before the Gallup research poll, which was released in 2009, and which formed the basis for the Arizona We Want Institute. The year was 2000, and I had just arrived in Phoenix. I was invited to attend an economic summit that year, from which I concluded that our lack of a common strategic direction for the state, a roadmap for the future, would result in a continuation of the reactive and damaging boom and bust cycles brought on by our reliance on a population growth consumer economy. Unfortunately, timing did not favor a call to action as Arizona was moving into the traditional boom portion of the economic cycle. Additionally, there appeared to be a lack of consensus within the community of ideas about how such a roadmap should be developed. Furthermore, there was no foundation on which to build such a consensus. Then, of course, the Great Recession of 2008 hit our state, and hit us hard. This was very frustrating to me. For the past 8 years, it was crystal clear that by simply reacting to the economic conditions, the predictable recipe of disaster would occur. And that's exactly what has happened. On the heels of this disappointment, the Center for the Future of Arizona, founded on the premise of being a do tank rather than a think tank, contracted with a reputable Gallup organization to survey the citizens of Arizona with the goal of eliciting people's priorities for the state. Surprisingly, the poll exposed a broad consensus across diverse citizen groups, offering for the first time a foundation for true action around a citizen's agenda. I found this foundational work to be compelling and an exciting first step to a transformative state strategy. I was not alone. A follow-on to the original survey, the Arizona We Want 2.0, transformed the original citizens' agenda into a call for action and led to widespread community support and recognition, not only from public officials, but key business and community leaders as well. It would seem that the citizens' agenda was indeed a most compelling basis for developing a long-term strategy around the 8 goals identified in this call for action. But today, we are at a crossroads. While a great deal of focus has been placed on getting our state leadership to drive the citizens' agenda, it is quite apparent to me that serious headwinds exist, both politically and economically, which calls into question the wisdom of relying solely on a state government solution. We simply cannot let the momentum and excitement for this movement erode due to paralysis of government. That's why my message to you today is a call to action for our business and community leaders and our local governments. Many studies have concluded that companies engage in corporate philanthropy to improve their brand and build community loyalty, both important means of promoting growth and profits. However, business, community organizations, and local government can offer advantages to the community collective action that goes well beyond state financial funding, such as employee volunteerism and public awareness. These studies also show that companies and organizations engage in philanthropy and do so for diverse sets of reasons. And there is no better reason for organizations in Arizona to engage in philanthropy than by helping to turn the strategy of the Arizona We Want 2.0 into action. My company, Copper Point Mutual, along with several other companies, organizations, and municipalities, including Freeport-McMoRan, National Bank of Arizona, and the Phoenix Philanthropy Group, founding sponsors of today's forum, have aligned our philanthropy and actions around the Arizona We Want 2.0 goals. To see partner organizations' reports, you can go to the Institute website, www.thearizonawewant.org, click on Arizona Advocates 2.0 in Action Partners Reports. I urge all business, nonprofits, and local government to go to the website and look at the work we are doing. But most importantly, I am hopeful that this will inspire you to take actions yourself. We are all dependent on a bright future for Arizona. Please join us and become part of it. Now it is my privilege to introduce the Executive Director of the Arizona We Want Institute, Darcy Renfro. She will be moderating our community leadership panel today. Darcy came to the Institute in March of this year from Science Foundation Arizona, where she served as the founding director of the Arizona STEM Network. Prior to her work with Science Foundation, Darcy served as the policy advisor for Governor Napolitano on economic development and education issues. She also served as deputy director for workforce development in the Arizona Department of Commerce. After graduating from the University of Arizona School of Law, Darcy joined the Phoenix office of Fenimore Craig, where she practiced law in the areas of government relations, utility regulations, and general litigation. She also served on the staffs of former Senators DeConcini and Metzenbaum in Washington, D.C. The Arizona We Want Institute is very fortunate to have her at the helm. So with that, please welcome Darcy Renfro.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Don. Well, this forum today is about transformational leadership in achieving the Arizona we want. And you just heard from Don Smith, who is leading one Arizona company to do its part in shaping our future for our state. Copper Point Mutual is engaging in all aspects of the Arizona we want. Now we're going to hear from three leaders who have translated a vision and a passion into significant actions that are changing the lives of Arizonans in one of the citizen goal areas, education. Education is the foundation of civic health and economic prosperity, and in many ways is the most important issue facing our state and our nation. These three individuals have successfully led efforts to bring education and opportunity to some of Arizona's most vulnerable populations, and in turn are shaping Arizona towards a brighter future. All three have figured out how to make a difference and how to do it in a big way, and have become nationally recognized in their fields. First, we have Bob Craves. Bob was a co-founder and CEO of College Success Foundation, a public-private partnership committed to providing college scholarships and mentoring to low-income, high-potential students. He helped bring that model to Arizona, creating the Arizona College Scholarship Foundation, which is now College Success Arizona. Over the past 14 years, the College Success Foundation has raised nearly $500 million, $500 million, for scholarships and programs for low-income students, mainly of color, to go to college. Prior to that, Bob was co-founding officer for Costco Wholesale Corporation, where he served in a leadership role until 2005. Next, we have Pete Hershberger. Pete is a former Arizona legislator who spent 40 years dedicated to issues impacting children. He is a nationally recognized leader in this area and led a bipartisan coalition at the Arizona legislature to address these issues. He is now founding director of an Arizona expansion site for Foster Ed, a national organization and model where he is dedicated to helping Arizonans' 14,000 foster children succeed in school. Finally, on the panel is Paul Luna, president and CEO of the Helios Education Foundation. Paul is here today for Vince Roig, who is the founder and current chair of Helios. Unfortunately, Vince and his wife were called out of state last night and were not able to be here today. Paul is a native of Miami, Arizona, and a first-generation college student. He went to Stanford to be a civil engineer, then returned home, where he has led both Helios and Valley of the Sun United Way. At Helios, Paul and Vince have led what was once the 8th largest holder of federally insured student loans in the country into a thriving foundation focused on impact in early childhood, student transition years, and post-secondary success. Since its inception, Helios has invested millions of dollars across Arizona and Florida to improve student success and their long-term quality of life. If you would, please welcome these three panelists. So today I wanted to focus on, with these three leaders on what has motivated them and how they've translated their passion into something very tangible to help kids. They've all had a unique role in creating and leading organizations focused on education that emphasize community and emphasize collaboration. If you could, and I'll start with Bob and we'll just go down the line, could you talk a little bit about what led you to your current work, how you translated your passion into this tangible asset for Arizona, and what brought you here today?
Thank you. And first of all, congratulations to this forum, Arizona We Wanna. Love the title. I just got to tell you one thing before I start there, is you never want to follow Howard Schultz. You know, we were mucking around in Asia, opened a couple stores in Korea back in the mid-90s, one in Taiwan. All of a sudden, Howard decides to go to Asia, and before you know it, you turn around, there's 3,000 Starbucks. So same way with this new program, you know, we've done some things which I'll share with you at Costco, but you know, this is another one of his atom bombs, boom. But what a transformational program for the employees of Starbucks. I can't say enough for what he's done, and hopefully play a real leadership role for lots of employers. How did I get to how did I get to do what I'm doing? It was pretty simple. In '96, Governor Locke asked me to chair his Higher Education Coordinating Board and then chair his Commission on Post-Secondary Education and what we needed to do to get our state ready for 2020. And you know, even a guy that tries to sell you mayonnaise in 50-gallon drums, if you're sitting in enough meetings, you know, sooner or later you get the message that there's some real trouble here. And obviously, the thing that really made me change the whole direction of my life was a third of our K-12 children, 900,000, in the state of Washington, were on free or reduced lunch. That's 330,000 children. I mean, it was just an appalling number, and I said, that can't be, you know. Where are these people? I never see all these poor people, you know, and so, of course, I live in Bellevue, Washington. But the point is that with that in mind, and seeing the trend increasing, you know, it just made sense to me to try to do something about it because nobody was really doing anything about it. And that was to try to educate our way out of poverty. So I decided to leave Costco in 2000. And fortunately, with the blessing of my boss, the Chief Executive Officer, Jim Senegal, who also said he would help me in this endeavor. And my goal was to try to raise $1 billion between 2000 and 2020 to help poor kids go to college. So obviously we started in Washington State, and I'll tell you in a moment the Costco thing, and then we went to then we decided to try to replicate it in other places, and we started here in Arizona. And we also started in Washington, D.C. So that is sort of how we got into it. I think I'll just leave the rest of the details for later, or should I keep going?
Go ahead. Okay,
well, when we came here, and I'll just tell you how that happened, I'm a snowbird. And so I went back to Washington for a fundraiser for a woman that was running for governor in the state of Washington. And sitting next to me was Governor Napolitano. And so, you know, she's like grilling me, what are you doing? How's this work? Da, 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 da. So I told her, and she said, well, we really need to do this in Arizona. So I'm going to have somebody call you. And I figured I'm not going to hold my breath on the phone call, but, you know, whatever. So I got back to Arizona that afternoon, and Paul Kohler, her higher ed guy, called me. And we had like a 3-hour conversation on, you know, how to do this in the state of Arizona. So we got the governor like a week later got me together with a few people in Arizona, Don Budinger, whom I'm sure you know, and at that time Bill Karstens was still alive, and he was in that meeting. So we talked for a while, and we decided that, you know, we would go forward with it. And you know, Bill Karstens met me in the driveway and said, you know, I understand what you're trying to do. And he said, I'll underwrite 10 students, which is like $25,000 commitment over 4 or 5 years. So that's kind of way that started. In the meantime, I had gotten a federal grant to do replication, so I thought I'd do, one new place in Arizona without the help of Gates, and then also do another one with Gates, and that ended up being in the District of Columbia. So when we got here, we started with, Don, pretty much Don and me and a couple of other people, Paul Kohler and Frank Brady. But we went and saw Vince Roig, who was at that point selling the company and creating the Helios Foundation. I say Helios, I think it's Helios Foundation. And, and so, one thing led to another. And Helios made a phenomenal contribution of $10 million to help us get started for scholarships. And our goal has been to raise $100 million or create a $100 million endowment for scholarships, and to be able to help poor children go to college. So far, I'm just going to call it the College Success Arizona, because that's what it will become today. So far, we've been able to award 800 scholarships here in the state of Arizona, and we have a fantastic graduation rate of, believe it or not, 70%. The typical graduate, yes, let's applaud that. Typically, for this group of students, it's 10%. So, we're on our way. All we got to do is raise $90 million more, and we'll be home free.
Thank you. Thank you, Bob. Pete?
Good morning. I'm Pete Hershberger. My passion for children's issues began with my 40 years of experience as a counselor working with at-risk kids, and my tenure in public service, service organizations, statewide education boards, and the Arizona legislature. I knew I wanted to impact children's issues in a meaningful way. I worked hard. I knew what my values were and are, and I was prepared. I was very fortunate to serve in the Arizona legislature, and that's where I really developed my leadership skills. Because I was prepared, I took advantage of that opportunity. What I did in the legislature was meaningful and had tangible results. What I'm doing today, foster ed, is meaningful and has tangible results. Foster ed is a program that's being piloted in Pima County. It is privately funded through foundations. It was started with a major grant from the Arizona Community Foundation and the Helios Foundation. Thank you, Paul. At the end of the pilot, we intend to become statewide and become embedded within the state child welfare agency. Why is foster ed important? It's important because the educational outcomes of our foster children are bad. They're worse than bad, they're horrible. Research tells us that foster children are a distinct subgroup, different from all other subgroups, and their educational outcomes are poorer than any other subgroup. As a result, when these children become adults, they are ill-equipped to be productive citizens in our state. 25% of former foster children are homeless. 25% experience incarceration. 33% receive public assistance. And the unemployment rate tops 50%. In addition to that, there are incalculably high rates for health care for this population. So that's the problem. Arizona is poised to get it right. Foster ed is being piloted right now. We do three things. We connect the foster child to an educational champion, an engaged adult who will act as a fully engaged parent. We conduct an assessment, an individual assessment of the strengths and needs of the education for this foster child. A proactive assessment leads to a proactive education plan. And finally, we form a team around that foster child. And that team shares responsibility for the educational success of that child. And on that team are representatives from the agencies that touch the foster child. So a representative from the Child Welfare Agency, the Behavioral Health Agency, one or more representatives from the school, the foster parent, if appropriate, the bio parent, if appropriate, and reunification is still the case plan. What we do is we keep these kids from falling through the cracks. Right now, they fall through the cracks. And we get these agencies that operate individually to communicate around this child so that a social service worker for the Child Welfare Agency talks to the teacher and talks to the behavioral health worker. In this way, we are going to promote educational success for our children. Arizona has a vision and a principle of not wanting our children to be abused and neglected. Therefore, when they are abused and neglected, we remove them from the home. When we remove them from the home, we take responsibility for them, for their safety and their well-being. Education is a major component of their well-being. Again, Arizona is poised to get it right. I'm very pleased to be part of this initiative. It is my passion. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Darcy. And good morning to everyone. First, just to reiterate that I'm here representing my boss and our founding chairman, Vince Roig. As Darcy indicated, unfortunately, Vince and his wife Jane had an emergency in their family and required them to go to Kentucky. And I wanted to start that because I wanted to put into context, if any of my remarks are a little disjointed, you have to understand that as of about 4 o'clock yesterday, if you had asked me, was I going to be attending the Arizona Leadership Forum, I would have shared very diplomatically that I had already committed to a different and another community, very important community activity with John C. Lincoln Hospital. So I would, if you had asked me what would I be doing about this time this morning, it was probably going to be out in the woods looking for a golf ball. And not sitting in front of 800 to 900 people talking about how Helios Education Foundation was the brainchild and vision for Vince Roig. But clearly this was more important. I'm proud to represent Vince in the spirit of sharing his story. And so with that in mind, I want to begin with the phrase of anything I say really should begin with the spirit of, if Vince were here, this is what I think he would want to say to you. So as it relates to Helios and how Helios was formed and created, I think Vince would want you to know that the foundation was really developed based on the 3 fundamental beliefs that still drive the Helios Education Foundation today. And these are beliefs that we state often when people ask us, well, tell us about Helios and what do you do and what are you about? And we try to articulate our 3 beliefs. And the first belief is that we believe education changes lives and makes communities better. Our second belief is that every student has the right to a quality education. And that's regardless of who they are, where they were born, who their parents are, where they live, and most particularly, the color of their skin. Every child has the right to a quality education. And thirdly, if we really want to have impact in education, the belief is that we know we have to do this work in community partnership and community collaboration. We know we can't be successful, we can't achieve our mission, we can't have impact unless we do it together in partnership with others, because that's where real change will happen in our community. So those beliefs kind of transcend what I think Vince and the Board of Directors of Southwest Student Services, which was the original company that was sold, that created the Helios Education Foundation, were really thinking about when they came up with this idea of converting a student loan entity into an education foundation. And that spirit of change and evolution, I think, continues today for our foundation. So when you think about what Vince's vision was for Helios and the board and all that made it happen, and there were many people that helped to make that happen, but the vision was to create not just a foundation in the typical sense of the word, not just a foundation with financial resources, but the goal was to create an entity that would be a real asset to the community and an asset to Arizona and Florida, and it's those two particular states because those were the two states that were served by Southwest Student Services. But to create, again, an education foundation that would be more than just a traditional foundation, and in fact, the idea and the vision that I think Vince had would be better defined to say we wanted to create a community impact organization. An organization that would be more than just a checkbook, that would be defined more than just how much money we would be able to get out the door. One that would be innovative in everything that we try to do, because we believe innovation is where real impact and collaboration can really gain a sense of change that we need to have in education across both states. An education foundation that would be willing to take risks, and that it was okay to take risks. And we've tried to keep that spirit alive in what we do. And what that means sometimes is that the partnerships and the investments don't always work. We like to point and brag about many of our investments, and as we see here today with College Success Arizona and Foster Ed and Teach for America and so many other partnerships that we have and we're very proud of, there are a handful as well where they didn't work out as well. And you really kind of test the will of your board when you have to go back to them and said that really good idea that we thought was going to have real systemic change, well, you know what, it really just bombed. And it bombed for any number of reasons, but what we found is that our board was okay with that. And again, it gets back to Vince's vision that says, well, if we're not failing a little bit here and there, then we're probably not pushing ourselves hard enough. But the aspect of that is let's make sure we're learning why it didn't work, and let's don't make the same mistake twice. We want to make sure that in some respects we're somewhat fearless in this space. When you talk about trying to improve education across two states, when you want to change fundamentally this idea that there should be a quality education for every student, education, as many of you know, is a very complex system. And there are many issues and there are many aspects of education that we really need to work hard to change. And we have to come at it with a sense of fearlessness, because if not, we can get overwhelmed with a belief that we can never really make improvements here. And so I wanted to make sure that I commented on these aspects because, as I said, if Vince were here and if he was sharing with you, I think his ideals and vision for what he had hoped Helios could become and what it would do, I think these are the types of attributes that he would share with you that he really hoped would become synonymous with the work of our foundation and the legacy of our work. And the last thing I'll say is just to kind of reinforce that one more time, is that when you think about our beliefs, this idea that we believe education will improve communities, we believe every child has that right to a quality education, and then this concept of community partnership, we think that's where our best work has really happened. When you think about these types of partnerships, when you think about a partnership like Expect More Arizona, where you have this another asset to this community that was created through true community collaboration. There's no one entity or organization or individual that can say, oh, I made Expect More Arizona happen. That's not how it came about. But what we realized as a collective group, beginning actually with Darcy and the P20 Council of Governor Napolitano's administration, is that this state needed a voice for education. We needed a voice that would champion education across the full continuum, from early care through K-12 to higher education and beyond. That we really didn't have a voice that would champion the fact that every student needed to have access to that quality education. And as a group of true collaborative partnerships, the foundations, business, higher education, First Things First, I mean, you can go on and name all of the organizations that are a part of this. It's that collaboration spirit that came together to create an Expect More Arizona type organization. And I think Vince would tell you that it's that type of community work that Helios is so proud to be a part of that we think is what we hope to continue to do and be as we continue to evolve this organization to be here in perpetuity, serving the citizens of both Arizona and Florida. So thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you. So we've had an opportunity to hear about the organizations and the work that these leaders are engaged in, but I want to hear, maybe take it to a more personal level. And you have leaders here in this room who are maybe they get the opportunity like we do to wake up every day and be excited about the difference they can make in their state or in their community. And we'll hear a keynote speaker who will come on next to talk about transformational leadership and following your passion. What would you tell, Bob, these leaders here today about what is the one thing or the couple of things that you've learned along the way that you think people here need to know, and how to take that passion and turn it into something real?
Okay. Well, I have two things. I'll start with one, and that's what I am, that I think you're missing a bet on in this state are snowbirds. You know, I must know a dozen men and women that were CEOs of major corporations that are here for a few months a year, like the guy that ran Target, for example. We kind of sit out there because we're not exactly sure what to do. You know, I got involved because of the story I told you earlier. But, you know, I'll just tell you, this fellow I bought my home from up on the TPC, and then he moved down to one of the really big houses, and he was an executive in a major company, and, you know, he thought he'd play golf. Well, you know, after 10 years, there's not much to your life anymore. And I know that this guy could have been very helpful somewhere. So if there, I guess what I'm trying to say, and I maybe have something like this, but if there's some way that people like me could reach out and say, you know, is there a meaningful place for me in Arizona, you know, to help out bringing my knowledge to the table, I think that would be a good thing for you to do. But what I really want to do is tell you something we did at Costco that I would love to see done here. And that's when I started the foundation. Jim Senegal, our CEO, decided that he wanted to do a breakfast every year and try to raise scholarship dollars for underserved youth. And so, you know, obviously, if Jim Senegal, the CEO of Costco, and Jeff Brotman, the chairman of Costco, invites a group of people in, you know what? People show up. And so we worked with University of Washington and Seattle U, and the idea was just to raise as much money as we could, you know, split the money in half, give it to the universities, and then they would take care of bringing in those students. Well, the first one we had, here's Howard Schultz again. You know, he's there. He brings Magic Johnson to the party. You know, Magic is, you know, talking to the students. And this is all a student-based breakfast, by the way. It isn't really grown-ups. It's really students. And so that's how we started. We raised a little over $1 million. You know, now that breakfast, they just had it 2 days ago, you know, raises $5 million. So we've been trying to figure out how to do this, and, you know, whether College Success Arizona, you know, helps bring it together. I mean, that's what we'd like to do. But if not, we would love to see a major company decide to take that. Because, you know, in your state, you got a real problem. You have no state financial aid, all right? So the poor kids are really dependent on a Pell Grant, which, by the way, the federal government is very clever. They've capped it at $5,500. Well, you know, I think if you go to Arizona State's, like, I don't know, KISS is 30 grand now. So I mean, we really need to raise private sector dollars to augment the, you know, the cost of the education, because obviously if we don't do that, and the students do go to the universities, I mean, essentially it's loans. So they're getting into tremendous debt. So I know there's got to be somebody out there that's been wanting to do a big thing, and this is a big thing, and we'd love to have you step forward and talk to us. Thank you.
Thanks, Bob. Thank you, Bob. That's great. Pete, you've had a lifelong journey in this space, and everywhere you go, you create something new, and you have forged alliances. So what would you tell leaders here about how to follow their passion and how to translate that to action?
Thank you, Darcy. In terms of the characteristics of leadership and leaders, I already touched on one: know who you are, know what your values are. Work hard, be prepared so that you can take advantage of that opportunity, and be consistent to your values. I want to touch on a couple of more. It's all about relationships. Ideas are conveyed through relationships. Nurture your relationships. Whether it's getting a bill for improved public policy in the legislature, or it's counseling an abused child, whether it's in a business meeting. In all these institutions, you have relationships. Nurture your relationships and strengthen those relationships. Next, know the rules. Every institution has rules. Some of them are written and public, and some of them are hidden. Pay attention to what the rules are. That helped me a great deal when I was in the legislature. I really knew the rules, and that helped me pass some good legislation and helped me stop some bad legislation. When you know what the rules are and you know how people perceive the rules, you know when to break the rules. And as a leader, you know when to create new rules. That's what leaders do. And finally, take risks. As a leader, you take risks. Be smart, but take risks, and that takes courage, and that's a characteristic of good leaders. Follow your passion. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Pete. So, Paul, talking a little bit about yourself, if you don't mind, how does a kid from the mining town of Miami, did I get that right, grow up to run one of the largest education foundations in the country?
I actually wish I knew the answer to that question. I'm still trying to figure that one out. But what I will share and what I do know is that I think I benefit from being an Arizona native. And I say that proudly. You know, when you grow up in small copper mining towns, I saw Ernie Calderon here who grew up in Morenci. What they say is you really grow up with a couple things. You grow up understanding the value of hard work because you see it every day when you look at the copper mines. And most often, as many of the case might be for us in those communities, is our parents worked, and our dads in particular most likely worked at that copper mine. And that had a great impression on many of us. We were benefited from oftentimes a really good education system because the copper mining industry, the Freeport-McMorans and the Phelps Dodges prior, invested in those schools. They invested in ensuring that the students and their children in those communities would have the best education they could get, even if you were in the middle of rural Arizona. So there were many factors that I think came into play. But I like to share with folks when talking about community and how to get involved in community work, and especially from a leadership perspective, I think what I've learned in spending essentially my entire life here in Arizona, except for 5 years of college in California, is two things. You know, one is this really is an open community and welcomes leadership, and I'll share a little bit about that. And yet there are two things specifically that I think we as a community ask or should ask of individuals who come into leadership or engage in leadership in our community. But first, you know, the openness. I think as Bob made the comment about individuals who come here from different places, who are looking or maybe looking for that meaningful place in this community work. The fact is, in this community, there is a meaningful place. There is room and opportunity to get engaged if you really want to and you have that spirit and desire to get engaged in the community work. I'll never forget a time when I was president of Valley Sun United Way, and we had a new leader, new president and CEO identified for the Dial Corporation. And Hinkle, maybe it was Dial Hinkle, I can't remember if that transition had taken place. And so the board chair said, we need to go out and talk to the new president and CEO. I've heard great things about him, and we want to make sure we encourage him to get involved. And the key was not that they had to get involved in United Way, though that's obviously what we were hoping we could get them to do, but to get involved in the community. And so we went out, we're having this conversation, and my board chair explained to this new CEO that said, look, you got to understand how open this community is. We welcome new leadership. We need your leadership. He turned to me and he kind of pointed and said, look, this kid's dad was a copper miner in Miami, Arizona for 43 years, and we let him grow up and run the United Way. And I think it was a really good thing he was trying to say when he was saying that. At least I took it that was a positive. But I think the message that was trying to be conveyed is really that point, and that point of kind of that spirit of equity that says it doesn't matter where you were born. It doesn't matter who your parents are. It doesn't matter if you have a desire and a willingness to engage in this community to help make it better. This community will embrace you and give you the opportunity. And I think that's what my friend Phil Francis from PetSmart was trying to convey when he was talking to the new president of Hinkle. But the second thing as well, I think is just as important, is if you're going to get involved in this community work and you're going to provide leadership, and Pete made some very clear delineations of what those attributes should be, and I agree with them wholeheartedly. But I think the other two things I would ask on behalf of the community folks who are going to get involved is that you should also get involved in this community work with an understanding that it really shouldn't matter who gets credit for the work that's being done or the success that is happening in our community. That should be unimportant, and that shouldn't be why you engage in this space of community work and providing community leadership. And secondly, it should also always be driven by doing the right things for the community. Because oftentimes, and as I said, I've been in this community specifically for almost 30 years now. And if you've been here as well, you know that sometimes community leaders, business leaders, they come and they go. And oftentimes they come, they get engaged, and then they go. And that's okay. We understand that. That's part of the corporate track. But those community leaders in particular that have had the most significant impact on the communities are the ones that when they were here, they had the big picture of what was in the best interest of the community driving their perspective and driving their leadership, that they weren't concerned about a short-term victory of community success so that they could then check it off and go to the next community. It's the leaders who came to our town who maybe aren't here anymore, but left some type of lasting legacy in the work that they did. And I think that's what we have to make sure that we always require of each other, whether you're staying here forever, like I think I plan to be, or others who may come and go, is that community leadership should be driven by those two fundamental principles, that it doesn't matter who gets credit for the success, and that we should always do what's right for the community long term, because that's what's going to serve our community and in education our students the best. And that there is this space and opportunity for you to do that if you really want to. And I think that's what makes our community unique, and I think it's what makes our community great.
Thank you. Well, that's a perfect close for this panel. And, the Arizona we want is a vision for Arizona set by the citizens of this state. And you've heard three examples of how of individuals and leaders that are working toward that vision. So we'll hope you think about what your passion is. Go to the Arizona we want, look at the goals, and see where you fit in and become a leader, and join us in this endeavor to build a better state in a proud and prosperous Arizona. So thank you very much.